Sailor Moon, and I'm Sailor Mars. And today, we're going to talk about what are we going to talk about? Like you would think that we would have the ground to know what we're going to talk about, but the truth is we're, not knowing what to talk about. So, all right. And I sure hope YouTube doesn't pick the likeness where we keep on having to shove the eyewear up. Anyway, so, all right. All right. So, our take on fair work. Now, our take on fair work is more like this. Fair work or fair doings or whatever you want to call it is a double-edged sword. And the first thing that someone must say that it's a double edged sword is that it doesn't actually shield you from getting in a bind with ownership law. Now, fair work works like this. And I don't even know why we're talking about this. But fair work works like this. It says that you can work with other folks' stuff as long as you are doing it for learning or teaching, scathing, making fun of, giving your thoughts on. And as long as you have shifted it up and made it where it is no longer that kind of work, but now some new kind of work, then it will be seen as fair work and it won't be seen as ownership law, ownership law unfollowing. Now, when I said it was a double edged sword, meaning that your film either meets fair work or it does not meet fair work. Someone could come on, look at your film, and say, oh, I don't think it's fair work, even though you may have been doing it for learning or teaching grounds, or you've been making fun of it, or scathing it, or giving your thoughts on it, or whatever you were doing with it, and for whatever grounds, it doesn't meet fair work. So, yes, it is a double edged sword in that sense, in that belief. Just get out of there. All right. In that thought, it would. In that thought. You're right, Sailor Moon. You want to say something about Sailor Mars? Yeah. Fair work is a double edged sword because even though you either meet the fair work or you don't meet fair work, and fair work isn't something that will shield you from getting in a bind with ownership. You know, yeah, it does go down a bit, but you can always still get in a bind with something over ownership, even if it was seen as fair work or not. So it's a double edged sword in that. You know, a lot of folks on YouTube, and probably other websteads, I would think, do fair work every day. They're either with a song or a film game or a show or a farsi or show or a play or something, and they're working with the song or the likenesses or whatever they're working with to show you what they're talking about or what they're scathing or what they're making fun of or what they're teaching about. And a lot of them always bitch, and they probably have good grounds to bitch, when they were doing fair work, but for some other grounds their film wasn't seen as fair work when they did what fair work law, I guess it is, it's a law, it's an offshoot of the ownership law, said that, yeah, it was all right to do. And a lot of these folks tend to be YouTube business mates or YouTube mates or whatever. And they tend to be the ones that get themselves in the bind because the YouTube layout, upmake, setup does not know the unlikeness between ownership and fair work. Or that's what they say, you know. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I truly believe that fair work is a double edged sword. And that's why I do not do anything on on my fairway or any of my fairways that someone could come on and say ownership, or solve ownership law and say it was their stuff. Well, you're right about, back to you, Sailor Moon. Yeah, that's just why I keep away from fair work. That's why I keep away from anything that have anything to do with ownership law. It is smooth to get yourself in a bind over ownership law on YouTube. Probably more than any other webstead. I know there's someone out there thinking, what about the Daily Motion, or Daily Drive, or Daily Shifting, or Daily Work? Yep, ownership law is also something you can get in a bind with, even on that webstead too. Um, so at the end of the day, I just keep away from anything. That's why you don't hear no songs. That's, well, actually first, that's why you don't hear no songs. That's why you don't see no likenesses. I don't got any tool that would help me film likenesses or films or farcier shows or plays or anything like that, or a film game. And two, I wouldn't do it if I even like did. Because it's so smooth to get yourself in a bind of ownership law, even when you're doing fair work. You know? So at the end of the day, I just keep away from that. At the end of the day, even though fair work is there and it lets you work with folks' stuff, at the end of the day, it really shouldn't. It really is more like a downside than an upside, because then you always have to keep in mind that when you're doing it, you can or cannot be. You might be. Your film can be seen as fair work, or it might not be seen as fair work. So every time you're doing it, you're putting yourself out there for it to be either seen as fair work or not seen as fair work. All right. So yeah, Sailor Moon, you're right about that, and that's our grounds to why we say that fair work or whatever you want to call it is a double-edged sword. How either you're seen as fair work or you're seen as not fair work. And the folks that don't get in a bind with it, they're the lucky ones. And then there are the unlucky ones that did everything right, but then for whatever grounds unknown to them, the film or whatever they were talking about, the farcier show, the play, the film game, the song, whatever they were scathing, teaching, making fun of, or giving their thoughts on, for some whatever grounds wasn't seen as fair work when that's what they were going for. So that's it. I'm Sailor Moon, and I'm Sailor Mars. We hope you like this film.